Thank you. Great. We're so happy you are all here. Welcome to our Naturance and Greening Cities partnership with ICLEI, Advancing Green Infrastructure Through Innovative Finance. So as I mentioned, this is co-hosted by the Greening Cities Partnership and ICLEI with the European Investment Bank, as well as 3 wonderful cities. Before we dive in, I just wanted to give you a very quick overview of ICLEI. For those who are new or need a refresher, we're a global network. You can go to the next slide. Sorry, Harris. We're a global network of more than 1,700 local and regional governments committed to sustainable urban development. We're active in over 100 countries, and we influence sustainability policy and drive local action for low-emission, nature-based, equitable, resilient, and circular development. Next slide. In Europe, our members participate in ICLEI projects that support and enable them to achieve success in sustainable development. Next slide. And we have many thematic areas, and my team, along with several of my colleagues here today, focuses on biodiversity and nature-based solutions. Next. And part of the reason why we're here today is one of our Horizon projects called Naturance, which aims to examine the technical, financial, and operational feasibility and performance of solutions built on a combination of disaster risk financing, so insurance, and nature-based solutions investments. This project has 9 partners and runs through March of next year. Next slide. So there are 5 key areas of the Naturance project, and today this roundtable is part of the Innovation Finance Labs. And just to give you a little bit of background, often these innovation labs are quite small, but the interest in this one was so large that we decided to open it up to everyone. So it has a bit of a different structure than the other ones. Next slide. Oops, can you go back, please? Sorry. Thank you. So the innovation labs are at the core of this project. Each consortium partner hosts 1 lab, and they run over the course of the Naturance project. So before we dive in to our wonderful Greening Cities Partnership survey results and our roundtable, we wanted to do a quick Slido to get a sense of who's in the room so that everybody can know who they're talking to. So please go ahead and scan the QR code or go to slido.com and put in the hashtag innovative finance and answer the first question. Okay, starting to come in. Okay, so far, lots of academia, other, super interested in what that other is, local, regional government. And feel free to enter in the chat, do a proper introduction if you like for networking purposes or just for us to capture that. That would be terrific. It would also be really interesting to know which country you're coming from and what that other is in your line of work. Okay, interesting. So we have some local regional government representation, again, academia and research, private financial institution, and of course, urban greening initiatives. Great. Okay, great. And so as these continue to come in, we'll of course share them after the fact so that everyone has an idea. So now, thank you for giving me the opportunity to give that introduction, and I'm going to turn it over to Etienne Olata.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. So as Kelly said, yes, it's a co-organization. This event is co-organized with ICLEI and the Urban Greening City Partnerships. I will give you a few words about this partnership. So, of course, this Greening City Partnership fully support, as you could see, the urban agenda for the EU in order to provide practical action at the end for better regulate, better finance, to have a better knowledge on how to accelerate the greening of the city. Aris, you can go to the second slide. This partnership, as you could see on the screen, is composed of different members. So you could see small, medium, big cities, but also region. As far as I'm working for Brussels Environment, so one of the region, Brussels region. You also have national authority, you have the representative for European institution, and also the financial world is there, and other stakeholder or the NGO, including ICLEI also. So both commonly, of course, we try to develop, co-design and co-develop an action plan to accelerate the greening of the city. So it's an interesting partnership because then we have to exchange together and to build things together, which is quite really inspiring. And it's almost 3 years now that we are working actively to define an action plan. And now, Aris, if you can go to the last slide. So sorry, it's quite small, but it gives you an idea of what we have developed so far. So the idea was to work on 6 practical action. You could see that on the screen. I will not go into detail of all action, of course, but I will just give you a few words. Action 1 is, as you see, to better quantify the demands and to find, of course, let's say a well balance between the offer and the demand for green infrastructure within cities. How to monitor, of course, the results at the end of the day, how to implement practically the greening of the city. Of course, it's closely linked with what we know, the nature regulation, so the new one. So we will try to propose practical solution to the EU representation, of course, to implement this new regulation. And the 2 action 4 and 5, is closely linked with the topic of today, of this roundtable, because it's linked to finance. Action 4 is more to mainstream a green finance mechanism through the different EU funding that are already existing. There was a position paper and also, of course, lobbying, let's say not lobbying activity, but we try to sensibilize and to accelerate, of course, the integration of green infrastructure into all EU funding. And Action 5 is directly linked with the topic of today because it's working on what we call innovative financing scheme. So what we have done so far in Action 5, and it is really the center of this discussion today, is that we want to hear from city and other stakeholders why they are not applying so much for private financing. We know that they are belonging or depending from public funding, but they are not so keen or not so, not motivated, but not so keen to go to private or a mixed public-private funding. So we want to understand why, what is blocking, what are the constraints, what is working. So we'll hear from city today. We have launched a survey to better understand that. And on the other hand, we want to hear also for the financial organization why financial instruments or financial products are not so attractive for city, or how can we accelerate the access to those financial instruments. And we will hear from the financial world and more precisely from the European Investment Bank, which is a partner of the partnership. So this is, in fact, one of the final deliverable today of Action 5, the organization of this roundtable, and I'm really happy that we were able to co-organize this with ICLEI. So I really invite you to go to our website because there are other webinars, other events. For example, tomorrow we have got one on the nature regulations, so I really invite you to have a look to it. And Action 6 on the screen is really there to summarize everything at the end. So now let's go directly to the final result of the survey and hear from both from city and from the financial organization what we have discovered so far. So I give the floor to Aileen.
Thanks, Etienne. I'm Eileen Crowley. I was the expert that was brought on to support Action 4 and 5, so better funding for the partnership, for the Greening Cities Partnership. So today, to kick off, I suppose I'm going to begin by sharing the results of a survey that we designed and distributed to cities across Europe. We'll jump right into the next slide, please, Harris. Okay, so we actually created 2 surveys for the Urban Agenda Partnership on Greening Cities. We created one for cities, and the aim was to better understand the barriers and enablers to funding green infrastructure in cities. So that was funding outside of the core municipal budget. What other kind of funding streams are cities using? And if they're not using them, what are the barriers to that? The second survey was for the financial actors, and we wanted to find the same information from them. You know, what are they funding in cities? What aren't they funding in cities? And what are the barriers and enablers to funding green infrastructure for cities from a financial actor perspective? So we circulated these surveys in January and February 2025. We received 85 city responses, which we thought was very good. However, not so successful for the financial actor responses. We only received 3. The survey itself focused both on green infrastructure development and maintenance. So kind of 2 separate subjects there, you know, how are cities funding the development of green infrastructure, but also how are they funding the maintenance? So we're going to present the responses from the city survey here now, but before we jump in, we'll just touch a little bit maybe on what we mean by urban green infrastructure. So when we talk about urban green infrastructure, we're talking about things like urban parks and gardens, green roofs, walls, sustainable urban drainage systems, urban forests, ecological corridors, etc., etc. And these can happen at various scales. So they can be at the micro scale, the meso scale, or the macro scale. So we were looking at all of these things when we asked cities the questions that we posed in the survey. So next slide, please, Harris. Okay, so as I said, there were 85 city responses, and 42% of those cities, so quite a few of those cities were small, with a population of less than 50,000 people. We had just under 10% were large cities of over 1 million, but as I said, you can see the majority were small cities. The majority of respondents, for whatever reason, came from Poland. We had 67% of cities coming from Poland. We also had Hungary, the Czech Republic, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, Cyprus, Croatia, Bulgaria, etc. Next slide, please. So I suppose some of the key findings from the survey was that, you know, cities rely heavily on public funds. That might be no surprise to many of you here in this room. 46% of respondents listed local government funding as the primary green infrastructure source of funding. So that's a huge percentage, really, especially when we take into account that 38% listed EU regional funds as their primary funding source. Now, in fact, it was that the percentage who listed this was actually higher, because 2 of those who responded other also mentioned European funds and Norway funds as the primary funding source. So public funds really are the main source of funding when it comes to urban green infrastructure. Interestingly, no city listed private sector funding as a primary funding source. So next slide, please. For green infrastructure implementation, cities rely heavily on public funds. So 69% of cities use local government funding for implementation. Again, EU regional funds and national funds were really high here for green infrastructure implementation. And private and philanthropic finance is nearly absent. You know, only 1% are using green bonds, 2% use crowdfunding, and 8% use PPPs or loans. So there's a big, I suppose, opportunity there that isn't being capitalized on. Next slide, please. And what we saw is that maintenance funding is actually even harder to secure. So 72% rely on local budgets for maintenance. 21% rely on national government grants or EU regional funds for maintenance of urban green infrastructure. Even EU grants are rarely used here. Equally, neither are any innovative financial schemes such as PPPs, crowdfunding. These are rarely used in cities. So next slide, please. So the top barriers to long-term green infrastructure investment for cities, I suppose that the biggest barrier really was administrative complexity. So things like lengthy and bureaucratic processes. 67% of respondents said that this was the main barrier to long-term green infrastructure investment. Institutional gaps also featured quite heavily here. Things like capacity, knowledge, coordination, political will. And financial limitations were also featured. So 41% said that their projects were simply unattractive to investors, and there were a lack of eligible financial structures for which they could access for this purpose. Next slide, please. But we also looked at the key enablers. So key enablers for securing and managing long-term green infrastructure investment. Institutional support was a key enabler for the development of green infrastructure and for the maintenance of green infrastructure. So this was key. Things like cross-departmental collaboration and strong leadership featured heavily. Grants and dedicated funding streams were also important to both funding and sustaining green infrastructure investment. So 47% rated grants and dedicated revenue streams as important for the development of green infrastructure, and 3/4 of respondents, which is quite high, rated grants and dedicated revenue streams as critical for the maintenance of green infrastructure. Next slide. Again, this probably won't be very surprising for many of you. Cities want simpler and more accessible support. So 86% of respondents called for simplified EU funding sources. And there is also strong support for mandatory ERDF allocation for urban green infrastructure, for technical assistance and staff capacity programs, and for tailored support for smaller cities especially. Next slide. So what we're seeing all in all based on these results is that there really are missed opportunities in innovative finance. Cities are relying heavily on public funds. They're not using tools like green bonds, impact investing, philanthropic grants. During our research, we identified 23 innovative financial schemes that are eligible for the environment. But what we're seeing is that they're simply not being used. And many cities cite things like lack of awareness, skills, or viable project packaging. So next slide, please, Harith. So what we're going to do over the next 45 minutes is we're going to dive into some of these key findings in more depth. And I will be looking for your input at various points in this discussion through Slido, but I'll also invite you to write any comments or questions that you have in the chat. So to help me unpack these key messages, I have Anna Maria Mitroy-Choybika, who's Senior Transport Specialist at the European Investment Bank. I have Anne-Marie Gut, who's Senior Advisor on Urban Greening in Utrecht. And I have Monica Avini and Kome, who's Manager for Roads and Green Areas Administration in Gdansk. And I also have Mr. Peter Gabor, who's Green Infrastructure Development Team Leader at the City of Budapest. So thank you all for joining me. Before I come to you, I would like to jump first to this Slido question. So what's one change that would unlock private or philanthropic finance for your city? So if you take a few moments just to answer this one, and we'll see what's coming up. And after that, I'm going to ask the cities for their opinion on why.
Eileen, while we're waiting for the results to come in, we do have one question in the chat from David Brosfield from the World Green Infrastructure Network, and he asks if you did a regional analysis of responses to see how the situation varies from city to city.
Great question, David. No, we didn't do a regional analysis of responses, but it's definitely something that might be worth digging into in the data for sure. As you saw, there was definitely a high percentage of cities from Poland, so it might skew things a little bit, but we should definitely look into that and we can share the results with you afterwards. So what's one change that would unlock private or philanthropic finance for your city? Manpower and competences, biodiversity, net gain. advertisement, knowledge on the revenues from NBS, having philanthropists in the city, having bigger companies in the city, of course. And I mean, these are all particularly relevant challenges if you are, say, a smaller city that doesn't have so many big companies, or you rely heavily on SMEs, dedicated cooperation schemes, tax breaks, knowledge on the revenues for MBS. Yes, again, that goes back to, capacity building, I think. While they're coming in, I want to go to our city representatives. I might come first to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie from Utrecht. Would you like to tell us why cities aren't unlocking these private investment opportunities?
One thing I can say that is positive, that the case I will present during this meeting is an example of private finance of green infrastructure. But it's also an exception, to be honest, because, I think in Utrecht, one important issue is that it takes investments in green, but they don't pay off. So you have to invest and there are no revenues. The revenues that you get from green infrastructure are more like societal revenues, as we call them. It's more like welfare and health for people, attractive city, but it doesn't really pay off. Like when you build a house, then you can sell it and then there's this financial revenue. So the investment is not followed by financial revenues.
So no clear financial benefits is a key issue.
Yes.
I'd like to hear from the other cities. Maybe Monica, would you have an opinion on why cities are not accessing private or philanthropic finance?
Sure, but I have to first agree that cities do do have this private finance, and we would like to present these opportunities. But I think they are a part of the many factors that you have mentioned through your enquete. There are the aspects such as lack of really established dialogue with the private partners about our goals and values, and the cities do not talk with private partners like in a roundtable about what needs to be changed in a city, because for the private partners it is also their city. So this dialogue is not enough established, because it exists, but it's not maybe as deep as it should be. And I think that the city do not have allocated staff and the dedicated ways of cooperation with the private partners, because everything needs to be structured. That just like European funds are structured, we need to have a structure for cooperation with private partners, and it's just a job to be done. A lesson to be learned from other cities, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see on the slide also it's the awareness of the benefits that seem to be one of the biggest issues. And, I think having one comment there is easy or simple examples that cities can follow. And Paulina, I see your comment, if there's no financial gains, how can we talk for private financing if there is no return? This is true, but the reality is there is financial return, as Anne-Marie mentioned. We have health and well-being returns. It's just they're not very easily monetized, or not yet fully monetized, to show the financial gain. I want to bring Anna Maria in from EIB. Anna Maria, what's your take on this? Why are cities not accessing private or philanthropic finance? You know, what's missing?
I think on the topic, I do have a few slides, but from what I see there, I would repeat some of the key words there, because I mean, from the experience we had, the way the way monetizing the benefits is happening, it's a bit of a challenge. And also, I think another challenge would be the size of the projects that are related to the topic, because usually this type of projects, they go for smaller amounts, like something under the values that are usually targeted by financial institutions. And there is another thing, that sometimes the nature-based solutions or the green elements are also part of larger projects or larger schemes, and you cannot see them right through, but they become components of an, I don't know, urban regeneration project, or I don't know, another type of municipal infrastructure projects, but they are there as components of this. Also, I think we do need to go a step further into capacity building. I think this is quite a nice topic, and workshops and roundtables like this one would definitely bring a bit more insight on what's on the market, what can be done, and it's beneficial for both parties, the financiers and also the cities, because we can learn from each other. We can understand what are the gaps for both parties, and we can try bridging them in an effective way.
Yeah, let's move on to some of your slides, because I know the EIB does have a lot of supports that they offer. So it would be great to hear about some of those. So Harris, could you move on? And again, I would say, Anna Maria, yeah?
Yeah, again, that would be the next slide, please, because what I would like to share with you in this first round is the Natural Capital Finance Facility experience, which was a first runner at the EU level as a blending financial instrument for nature-based solutions. So this one was a joint, can you do the next slide, please? This was a joint initiative by EIB and the European Commission, and it went from 2015 to 2022 under the operational period. It's just closed with all the results. The main purpose of this tool was to demonstrate that nature-based solutions are indeed, or ecosystem services are indeed bankable, and we can find bankability in those types of projects. We aim to have eligible beneficiaries from all public and private entities. We didn't have any conditionality other, in fact, that the investment size would need to be of scale from 2 million to 15 million. And it was targeted at innovative projects like preserving or restoring natural capital, generating measurable environmental benefits. So this is where we found out and we dealt with monetizing the benefits from this type of projects. And also we looked at innovative projects that fall within the sector, such as ecosystem-based adaptation, green infrastructure, sustainable forestry, agriculture, and even ecotourism. But the requirement was to have a bankable business model. So going to the next slide, please. I just chose 3 case studies because those, I think they kind of like show the type of models that work. Those are adaptive models with various solutions. So it's not one solution fits all. It's various solutions depending on the situation and on the initiative. One is, which is quite interesting, it is the Peatland Finance Ireland, which is an innovative community-led initiative which was established, I think, in 2022. That aimed at creating a national and catchment scale financing system for peatland restoration in Ireland. We supported it through the European Investment Advisory Hub and through NCFF on the advisory and capacity building side. How did it work? It worked through 3 stages. One was establishing a peatland standard for Ireland, where whomever wanted to benefit from the scheme underwent a voluntary certification. The certification provides a scientifically grounded methodology to assess ecosystem services, and also this certification adhered to international environmental principles, aligned with various frameworks. And then the second step was having a financial mechanism which allowed for the standards to enable landowners and project developers to generate high quality ecosystem service credits. These credits could be sold to organizations seeking to invest in conservation and sustainability initiatives, and then providing a return for projects, capital and management requirements. So it includes a component also on the operational side. And then the last step was stakeholder engagement. As I mentioned, this was a community-led initiative. So the PFI engages a broad range of stakeholders. So we do have in this scheme public bodies, NGOs, local communities, and local businesses. So in terms of this type of model, I think the key issues was the scale, because it targeted restoration for quite a huge surface across the entire country. It has an environmental impact, and it's a community involvement at large scale. The other one, which is quite interesting as well, is the CDC biodiversity in France. The initiative was supported by the NCFF through a loan of 5 million euro. And it was designed to advance biodiversity offsetting in various areas in France. So this worked, the loan mechanism worked like also in stages. It established the conservation sites. The second stage was selling of biodiversity credits. And then the EIB provided a 5 million loan with a contingent repayment structure. Repayment obligations were linked to the successful sale of biodiversity credits. aligning then financial returns with ecological outcomes. I think this model has elements both of elements interesting and also innovative elements like risk sharing, market-based conservation, and also it's a model that's scalable. Next slide, please. So for the next slide, I
just
really
to jump
share.
in there, Anna Maria, for cities who are looking at this and thinking, okay, these are really kind of innovative and they're clearly making impact when it comes to nature restoration. We're correct in understanding that you provide a huge amount of support to cities who are looking to develop something like this.
Yes. I mean, that was the case of NCFF. Now we advance in the next stage with providing more understanding under the and the support under the InvestEU program and other types of partnerships. But I think the other element, I mean, those cases that you see here also show a little bit on the urban side, because we do have on the NCFF, we do had quite a large 15 million loan to an equity fund, which was then investing in brownfield development with nature-based solution in urban areas. It was the Ginkgo Fund 3, which was kind of like tackling the regeneration and urban revitalization of brownfields in various urban settings in Europe. Next.
So Anna Maria, where can we find more information from those case studies? Is there an EIB report?
I think you can find a lot of information on the EIB website under the topic of nature capital finance facility. So there are information there, and I think we also can share this with whomever is interested. So it's we can really share it with everybody who's interested. And I think coming back to the key challenges that we had on the NCFF, they kind of like mirror whatever we had in this Slido thing, because one of the most relevant one was the return on investment, which for the case of the NCFF was quite too stringent. Requiring projects to be revenue generating or cost saving with a positive return on investment is quite difficult when we talk about nature-based solution projects. Also, I think the size, I mentioned it, the complexity and transaction cost, which was also mentioned, because most eligible small-scale projects and small and also smaller actors, for them it was an administrative burden, as well as quite a high cost for having consultants to prepare bankable proposals. Also, I would like to say that from the beginning, the NCFF had a component of technical assistant, but it wasn't highly integrated with early design stages. So what we find out that we need to have in place the technical assistance from the beginning. So that meant that project promoters at the beginning were on their own. What I showed you in the three other, the success larger schemes, where we provided mostly TA, it was when we realized that building capacity was quite an important enabler for the funding and financing to go ahead. And I think the last slide would really go into having into showing you a little bit the lesson learned, and the fact that the NCFF now closed was quite instrumental in demonstrating that there is viability in integrating biodiversity and climate adaptation into financial sustainable projects. So I think it was a success, and it laid the ground for EIB to expand and diversify its approaches. I think one of the key programs now is InvestEU program, where EIB channels support for nature-based solution through this project, both in terms of blending financial instruments, so combining the EU budget guarantees with EIB loan, but also through supporting projects in terms of technical assistance. And I think another important outcome from this NCFF was the strategic partnerships that enable EIB to enhance collaboration with, for example, WWF. It was a partnership of 4 years to develop NBS around across Europe. And I think another partnership is the Rewilding Europe Capital. So it's a financial facility supporting a variety of enterprises restoring degraded landscapes. So this is, in a nutshell, our experience, our lesson learned from this first first EU-level blended financial instrument, and I think we did demonstrate that there are bankable projects, but there is a long road towards having them on the board more often. And I think there is a lot in terms of collaboration and sharing experience amongst ourselves.
Great, thank you, Anna Maria. I completely agree. I think seeing practical case studies working on the ground and having that exchange between cities to talk about the practicalities of how things work is critical. And we will, our cities, Utrecht, Budapest and Gdansk, will be sharing some of their experience shortly. So we'll go to the next discussion point, please, Harris, on the next slide. So our survey found that, maintenance funding is even harder to secure. I'll go to you again, maybe Anna Maria. Can we imagine a different funding model, do you think? Can funders offer maybe long-term flexible support models that include maintenance?
I think there is quite a core constraint in terms of NBS implementation, which is mismatching between short-term funding and long-term operation and outcomes. And I do really think that maintenance is essential for sustainability, because without adequate long-term maintenance, the benefits of nature-based solutions or green infrastructures degrade rapidly. We cannot discuss of benefits if we don't consider the long-term maintenance. So nature investments are seen as long maturing, complex, often they would require stewardship beyond typical financial horizons. And I think the three models that I had in the prior presentation included some mechanisms to cover for maintenance in a controlled and monitored way. Harris, can you put the slide? The one slide on long-term maintenance. Okay, thank you. But there are some challenges. I mean, there are some challenges in relation to providing to covering the OPEX as well as the CAPEX. I think one is the EU state aid and budget rules, because this might restrict long-term subsidies and guarantees for OPEX sometimes. There is the performance uncertainty, where ecosystem outcomes evolve slowly. It's difficult sometimes for the project promoter to tie OPEX to output-based funding. But there is another thing, which is donor fatigue. I mean, maintenance lacks the visibility and prestige compared to capital works. So that's why sometimes, especially in terms of the private investors, they do look for the visible and prestigious elements. What we do at the EIB in terms of the current practices, we can include sometimes in the program loans or whatever category of loans, maintenance components if they are part of a multi-year investment plan. It's a case by case situation. For example, if we have municipal programs for flooding protection or forest management. There are situations of blending finance. Projects under InvestEU or Just Transition may include operational costs, but there is a condition. They need to be linked to measurable outcomes over time. Also, we do have at EIB the technical assistance grants. They like Jasper, Selena, whatever, but they are not directly targeting the funding for maintenance, but rather planning for the OPEX life cycle cost and operational models, which enables you to enable the project promoter to have a broad image of the overall cost of the investment. What we do encourage for the future, and it's a step ahead, is the stacked or bundled funding model, like the one that we explained on CDC. We do encourage and explore the nature credit markets, where revenues from credits like carbon, water, biodiversity are used to finance ongoing site management. And also the public-private agreements with maintenance obligations, also considering some performance-based contracts might be on idea of going further into funding the nature-based solution. But anyway, my conclusion to this is that we all must move from the project-focused mindset to a landscape stewardship approach in the case of nature-based solution. So this really requires blending various funds, not just looking straight of financing, and also it requires to design properly long duration support mechanisms. Also, that would tie into verified ecosystem outcomes. So it's an exercise of understanding the ecosystem outcomes as well. So that's on my take on how we can finance long-term maintenance.
I think that echoes a comment in the chat from David, who says that individual projects are great, but only partial success, and urban scale transformation should be the goal, which, you know, it is really all about the longer term, wider strategic plan and financing of that. Let's move on to our third discussion point, please. And we have a Slido question here. So what is the most important way financial actors can better support cities to access green infrastructure funding? So you have an opportunity to pick some of these answers. So, and this is really because, you know, cities told us that they're really overwhelmed by complex funding processes. Even a lot of the words, the jargon, let's say, the words that we use around funding and financing, they're not really what urban practitioners are used to using every day of the week. So even to try and demystify some of those words is a challenge in itself. Yeah, so you can see here, currently leading is the provision of technical assistance and training. Yeah, and I mean, even at the basic level of demystifying the jargon, all that kind of funding jargon. Embedding funding for long-term maintenance, not just capital investment. Creating smaller scale and flexible funding schemes for small cities. Yeah, I mean, we've seen in what you were saying earlier, Anna Maria, that this issue of critical mass and having projects that are large enough are really a challenge when it comes to attracting private finance.
Yeah.
So it still seems to be that number one is all around the technical assistance and embedding funding for long-term maintenance. It seems to be the top two. So Anna Maria, like, you know, how do you think we can make the current tools that are there more usable, especially maybe for small and medium-sized cities where I think it's particularly challenging for them to access external financing?
Yeah, I think I mean in terms of the smaller cities, having the investment size not that large and appealing for financial institutions. I mean, there's a issue of aggregation and gaining critical mass, and they can do that to either regional or territorial or thematic aggregation. Yeah, considering, for example, similar nature-based solution for multiple towns. That might be one aspect. And then I think there is this number one, which is simplifying application and reporting procedure. This is one of the enablers that I find it also important. Institutional and regulatory clarity is very important in order to not only to develop solutions, but also to have them implemented and producing results. And then on the project preparation and technical assistance, this is quite key, because sometimes I mean, what we see and what it was also in this reported, there is a lack of internal capacity, there is a lack of manpower to structure complex projects and to built-in aggregation or critical mass, and also to apply to funding, to prepare feasibility studies, which sometimes can be very difficult. So here, I think aside from having aside from having standardized templates for nature-based solutions, I think at regional level, there needs to be technical hubs or units that would need to be integrated within the intermunicipal association. What is EIB and together with the Commission doing is providing advisory support through various technical assistance mandates. I mean, we do have like mandates like JASPERS, which looks into project preparation and capacity building. ELENA, which looks into project preparation from the concept to the approval of the preliminary design. And also the InvestEU Advisory Hub, which is used for a large variety of technical assistance. So I think we all identified the right set of enablers, but I would add the last one, the one that I put in red, the risk management and credit worthiness, because my advice would be to use as much as possible the EU guarantees to improve lending terms. I mean, the InvestEU is quite a good instrument for risk sharing for this type of projects. So, and also what I would like to add is that the nature-based solution, they need to be projects or the green, or they need to be in such a way to align them to the do not significant harm principles, because then it will be easier to match with the available funding and also to EIB's climate bank roadmap. If in case of blending and integrating frameworks. I think I went through the whole of the variety of instruments that EIB is using, and it's providing for the potential clients. I mean,
we do have a question in the chat from Priscilla. So she says, does the EIB have recommendations regarding setting tax mechanisms to mobilize green funding at the local level? It might be not something you want to answer right on the spot, but I'm sure you have advisors and specialists who will be happy to give those recommendations.
Yeah, well, I think this is also the financial the financial advisory is also linked to the to the loans we provide, and it's a case-by-case solution. Everything is tailored on a case-by-case solution, and appraising and assessing together the needs of the municipality or our beneficiary. It's not one case fits all. It varies from each situation.
Very good. I see there are a couple of other comments and questions in the chat, but before I go to them, I would really like to move on, because I want to hear from the cities. We've seen the wide array of support that the EIB can offer, which is fantastic. I really like your idea of having, technical hubs integrated within the regions on the ground, though. I mean, that's always more approachable, no matter how good the support infrastructure is at the European level. So before we hear from the cities, you'll remember back, I showed the slide with the 23 innovative financial schemes, and we noted that there were missed opportunities in innovative finance. We do know that some cities are paving the way here, but it's not yet mainstream. So we'd like to hear from the audience. I noted in the beginning of the Slido that there weren't too many cities here, but if there are any cities in the audience, or if you're from a city and you're aware of funding mechanisms that are used in your city, you could please respond to this poll. And it is, which funding mechanisms have you used for green infrastructure development or maintenance? And so even if you're from a university, you can answer on behalf of your city if you're aware of them having accessed any innovative financial scheme to develop or maintain their green infrastructure. And after this Slido, we're going to go straight to the cities, where we're going to hear from cities that have accessed alternative funding mechanisms. We'll hear first from Monica in Gdansk. We'll then go to Anne-Marie, and then very at the end, we'll hear from Peter in Budapest. So European and national calls supported. Yeah, I mean, again, that's probably grant funding as well. ITIs, okay. Municipal funds, EIB loans, okay, very good. And corporate donations, that's exciting. So we're starting to see a little of diversification there outside of the grants and the public funds. Levies, very good. ERDF, developer funding, excellent. So we are seeing a little bit of variety there. Corporate donations.
And Eileen, we do have a question in the chat about observations regarding financing opportunities and challenges for large versus small, larger municipalities versus small towns. And I know that our case studies will touch on this. So perhaps that'll be a bit, more illustrated after that.
Yeah, I think so. And we do have a nice variety. I mean, some of the case studies that will be presented will be more complex. And then I particularly like how Peter from Budapest has just started a green fund. And I think, it's really can give inspiration to anyone who's looking to diversify their funding sources. So without further ado, let's go straight to them now. Monica, I will invite you to maybe take the floor and tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Gdansk.
Of course. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me here, and hello to everybody. And I am very happy to present some examples of Gdansk experiences. And just before I present this specific case, I would like to mention that we are working to build our Green Gdansk Fund just to facilitate the cooperation with private sector for green interventions in our city, and we hope we will start very, very soon. So the case I'd like to present is the case of cooperation with our Waste Utilization Facility Limited. And the company plays a big role in our city, as in other cities, the similar bodies place. But for the citizens that live close to the facility, it is rather difficult coexistence because of some, for example, not very pleasant odors that comes sometimes with the wind. And that sometimes cover the positive impact of the waste utilization facilities that it plays. So one of the action between many pro-environmental action played by utilization facility are the microforests. They have introduced microforests in Gdańsk, and now we are the national leader of microforests. Just few words about this nature-based solution. These are the forests settled according to Miyawaki philosophy. They are planted on small degraded areas, about 200 to 150 meters square is enough. And thanks to change of some ground and planting the dense forest of little plants, little shrubs, they can grow 2 or 3 times faster than normal forests and create a local microforest, microclimates that we all lack in our cities. And the other very important thing is that they are always planted in cooperation with local community. And as you can see on the second picture, there is a table with plenty of names. So each citizen that took part in this action is mentioned on this table, and it brings a big impact not only on nature but also on local community. So it is a win-win situation, and I think this is something that we all need in terms of cooperation with private sector. And as for the maintenance and this blending, as Anne-Maria was mentioning before, it is also very, very important. And in this scheme, the waste utilization facility gave its own compost that they are producing. They paid for the event of planting. The volunteers, citizens were planting the forest, and the waste utilization facility, the funder takes responsibility for maintenance for the first 3 years, which are the most important years for the maintenance. And after, the city will take over the responsibility of maintenance. So as you can see the figures, with really small amount of money, which is 20,000 euros per one microforest, using its own product, which is the compost, and the hands of citizens, we could bring a very nice nature-based solution to our city. And maybe if we can come to the second slide, I could present the other solution, which is also combined with a tree planting. We do not have such many parks and green areas in a city as we have the forests, and we are very happy about it. You can see on the map how big are the green lands of Gdansk, and what is the green space per capita. We are very happy about it, and the Gdansk citizens love forests and are very keen also to take part in the activity of tree planting. So on this, with these numbers, I just presented the action that took part in the last 3 years and were founded by local NGOs. Also, as you can see, these are not very expensive solutions, but they bring a lot of community involvement, and we can plant a lot of trees with such actions. So maybe if there are
that's fantastic.
Specific questions about our experience, I can say more.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat. I have to say, having visited Gdansk, I was able to benefit and enjoy all the wonderful forestry there, especially on a hot day. It's just a really lovely refuge, and it's really nice to see how you've got the community involved in that as well. For, as you said, such a low cost. If you have any comments or questions, do pop them in the chat, but we'll move on to Anne-Marie because I want to get all the city voices in here. So Anne-Marie, please tell us about your experience in Utrecht.
Yes. Can you put on the next slide? Because this is the case I want to present. To the left, you see this map of Utrecht. There are 2 canals that flow through the city, and you see this green area, this green line. That is a 80 kilometers long, as we call it, a city island ring park. It's a small and very long park, and it's next to the borders of these 2 canals. To the right, you see how it looks today, which is well, a lot of asphalt, low quality, little green, and it has to be turned to a very nice green park with a lot of green, a lot of trees, of course, but also with a facility for active transport, for walking, for skating, for cycling. And as you can see in the map, at the eastern part of this ring park, you see this red star in a gray zone, a long gray zone. This long gray zone, this is the Merwede Canal development, which is a quite big development of mainly houses in Utrecht. It's quite a narrow and long area, and where the red star is, that is one part of this new neighborhood, and it's called the New Defense. There used to be a terrain that was a property of our Ministry of Defense, and we are developing social housing and more expensive housing in this area. Can I have the next slide? This is this neighborhood, the New Defense. It's the map. This map, I realize it's the other way around. So the blue dotted line on the eastern side, it's eventually it's on the west. That's the canal. And the borders of this development is the red dotted line. And as you can see to the northwest, there's this park area. So this is an important green part of this new development. It's the park for this neighborhood. And as you can see, which is indicated by the green arrows, there's this small part next to the canal. There are trees indicated, and that's at this moment it's just the side of the canal, but it's added to this park, so this park becomes larger. And because of this construction, there's also a financial construction, because the realization of this this part of this ring park is paid by the developer of the developer of this area. So the park in this area is bigger, and this is a way of realizing part of this ring park, which is, as I said, 18 kilometers long. So this is quite a challenge to realize this entire ring park in the coming years. Can I have the next slide? Because what's interesting, what are the enablers in this project? Well, there are enablers on the side of the ambitions and goals of our city council. We have a very progressive city council which really promotes integral decisions, which means that green infrastructure, because it's considered so important for an attractive, healthy and sustainable city, green infrastructure is supposed to be part of urban development in our city. These progressive goals are part of our long-term perspective, our spatial development as a city. By 2040, we want to have added 440 hectares of green infrastructure inside the city and 250 outside the city. So these are huge ambitions and huge challenges. that's on the policy and the ambition part. More important are the conditions that enable these this development to be in this way. An important thing is that the municipality is 100% landowner of this neighborhood, this new defense area. We are not a landowner in the entire Merwede Canal development, but this part we are landowner. And this means that we have a stronger say in what we think is important. So this green infrastructure is one of the things that we are really think are important. The second condition is that we use private law instruments in a public law role. We, as a municipality, have a public law role. We have to enable a developer, to really build these houses, and we have to set the conditions, the spatial conditions for these kinds of developments, and we have to be aware of rules and regulations concerning environmental issues, concerning green, but also the obligations of the housing program that has to be realized in this area, but also mobility and social facilities, and of course, green infrastructure. And the way we do this, the private law instrument, is that we make a prior agreement with the developer before, as a municipality, we change our land development plan. To enable this development, the developer can't do this without a land development plan that enables this development to be realized. So we have a public instrument that gives us a kind of control in this whole process. And then there is this spatial opportunity. As I said, we realize a part of the green infrastructure in this development area outside the project boundary. So there's always a shortage of space. There's space for green area outside the project boundary. And a thing that is important as well is that the municipality obtained this part of the ring park zone from the ministry. Here it says defense, but it's another one, but it's a minor detail. But we got it for quite a reasonable price. So that's also a thing that helps. So these are the enablers in this project, in this case. And well, as I said, the conditions in this specific area are really the most important enablers in this case.
Great. Thank you, Anna Maria. Thanks, Anna Marie. I also think, having that progressive city council, it ties in very much with what came through in the survey, having that organizational support and leadership being one of the key enablers. Again, I invite everybody to please pop in any comments or questions that you have in the chat. I will move for now to our third example, and that is from Peter from Budapest. So Peter, would you like to tell us, please, what you're doing in Budapest?
Yeah, is it possible for me to share my screen?
You can certainly try.
Okay, I will try to do that. So, hello everybody. I am from Budapest. I'm a landscape architect. I am the head of Budapest Green Infrastructure Development Team, and I love talking about the green space and green infrastructure Budapest project of the city. But I'm not going to do that today because I'm going to talk about the Green Budapest Fund. Budapest city municipality, as other municipalities I can see, is managing its green spaces through its own funds, through the city municipality budgets. But we are strongly motivated by our national government to do some changes. And the motivation is that the government of Hungary is in a political struggle with Budapest City Council, and they are constantly cutting the Budapest City's funds. The national government also in struggle with the European Union, and for this reason, the European funds are hardly available for Budapest City. So we are looking for new ways of financing. And as one possibility, we are trying, and we introduced last year a new fund, which aim is to invite private individuals and invite small or larger scale companies to sponsor or co-finance projects, green infrastructure projects of Budapest. The fund was established with a budget of 12,000 euros. And it's very small at the moment. We are at the beginning of the process. The aim is to present what plans and what projects we have, and to make it possible through microfunding and through sponsorship to provide additional funding towards this project. What I would like to show you, we don't have much at the moment, but yeah, have I managed to share my screen? We managed to introduce a website. So we have a website now. Zöld Budapest Alapítvány, that's the name of our fund, Green Budapest Fund. On this website, we present the problems and the projects we have. On this slide, for instance, we are presenting the flooding at the Danube, and we are trying to invite people to provide funds for the recovering green spaces after the flooding. This is a small project where a private company sponsored of planting 36 trees along Budapest. We have two more projects on this website. One is about renewing a skate park, and the other is the renewing of a playground in the city. The goal is to connect this website with possibilities to make donations, and after getting some popularity and some micro sponsorship, we hope that larger scale investors can be invited and attracted by this project. We have a project where we inviting companies to be guardians of the parks of the city. And I would just like to share a video with you. This is our first sponsorship video. It's a park in Budapest. The sponsor, as you can see, is the Barion Hungary. It's an internet company. And they decided to become guardians of a small half-acre size area of Budapest, and they are not just providing funding for this area, but they also actively helping in planting trees. They're using this opportunity as a CSR opportunity for the company to make their employees more aware about the issues of green space management and climate change, and also they use it as a way of providing themselves publicity. On the pictures, you could see the mayor of Budapest, who is very supportive of this project and also supporting our Green Budapest Fund. So I think that's all I can share with you at the moment. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that.
Thanks, Peter. I really think that's so inspiring because, you know, €12,000 is really not a lot of money to kick something off. And this this website, which is like a shop window, offers people an opportunity, and hopefully that will have a snowball effect, you know, tapping into behavioral science. And little by little, this is really going to grow. So I think that's very exciting. Kelly, do you want to come in?
I just wanted to ask a quick question. Do you happen to know like the average size of gift that you receive from this crowdfunding?
Well, we have three sponsors so far. One sponsorship was 500,000 forints, which is, let me just divide it by 400. 500,000 divided by 400, it's €1,200. So that was our first and sponsor. There's a second one which sponsors us with €3,000. So, but we are trying to make it. We actually have a lady who monthly grants us 60,000 forints, which is I think about maybe yeah, it's a bit more than €150 per month. So there are also very small scale donations, but as Eileen mentioned, we hope that this can build up. We hope it can build up in a snowball effect, and these small donations can provide publicity for the fund, and step by step we can attract larger scale sponsors. We are in discussion with national large scale investors like companies like Nestle and one of the banks in Hungary. So we are in discussion. They are all very interested. So I think there is a potential in this product.
Right. Great story. Thank you, Peter. You can stop sharing your screen now, and I'll ask Karis to pull up the other slides. I see Kelly has also asked you, Peter, if you could drop the links to the website and video in the chat so that it's accessible to everybody.
Yep.
So we're moving on to our final closing point here, and very briefly, our survey finding is that cities cite institutional support, cross-department collaboration and strong leadership as key enablers. We've seen that through the examples that the cities have shared. Anna Maria, very briefly, where and how can the finance sector reinforce these institutional enablers? And I think you can probably move on to the next slide, Harris, or the next couple of slides. Anna Maria has a slide to share.
Yeah, just a brief one. And I think, I mean, I mentioned several times that about innovative financial mechanisms, but just put it plainly, these type of mechanisms are not only financial tools. They're more than that. They are the instruments for de-risking, for showing that there is viability, and for mainstreaming the green projects. And I think one of the key elements of these mechanisms is the replicability, which is built through those models. And I think in its strategic role, EIB is doing quite a lot in providing support aside from blending grants with loans to make schemes financially feasible, but we also provide upon necessity and upon tailoring with the promoters, technical assistance, and we do promote a lot of institutional innovation by working with our promoters on the financial governance at local level. And I think there is a lot to do from both sides. both in terms of financiers and investors and in terms of the cities. And I think there are elements in the in the future that enables the project promoters to go a step further. And for sure, on the EIB side, we're here to help. And one of the interesting things that we kind of like found through helping with the capacity building from our TAs is that at some point there will be a need to go a little bit beyond the classical capacity building towards embedding financial design expertise within the city itself, like having the skills in-house for considering urban finance innovation. Also going a step further into including financial innovation objectives in the city and municipality plans, or, for example, in the sustainable urban mobility plans. And I think the other element here beyond capacity building is have in the co-leadership of green investment strategies, not only engineers and project managers, but also position CFOs and urban planners quite in a visible and strong position. What I would also think that it would be a step further is to institutionalize the revolving funding mechanisms at urban and regional level. Maybe through moving a little bit beyond the pilots, because experience show that cities are piloting now elements. And I think at some point, having city anchored climate or nature funds, or I don't know, green funds integrated within the EU funding cycles would become an element to help to better help the preparation and implementation of MBS solutions. And also I think that at some point, because we were talking about aggregation, piloting multi-jurisdictional NBS finance platform would allow then to have some kind of share ownership and scale, whether it's countrywide or it's region-wide. This is something that would need to come at some point in the future. I would rather say that in terms of financial instruments, there is a lot from various financial institutions. So I talked to you about the mixing between EU grants and loans, the bonds that you are already using, the specialized facilities like we have Rewilding Europe Capital. But what I really liked, it was an instrument and a mechanism that is it can be quite common, but we don't really see it, and we don't really at city level we don't really gain the advantage. Is using the land value capturing. This is a mechanism where public investment in green infrastructure can increase significantly nearby property values, and then this would be recuperated via taxes and fees. It's quite a very interesting mechanism to have a return on investment through having good quality public rail. And I think, I mean, you already mentioned about the green platforms, which can be designed as both intermediaries or platforms to aggregate small nature-based solution projects, to have them standardized, or even at some point to bundle them for investment in a coherent way. So I think we are at the point where we started having some experience with the green infrastructure, and we started testing various solutions. And I don't think there is one solution fits all, but I think we can use whatever financial mechanism is at hand to build scalable and replicable models for our projects. And
Thanks,
I
Anna
think
Maria.
that's on my side.
I just want to give the final word to our cities, and I just want to ask them in one sentence. Do you have a final message for any cities that are struggling to close their green infrastructure funding gap? What would you say to inspire them, to encourage them, and to motivate them? So, Anna Maria or Anne-Marie, Monica, Peter, any final words of advice based on your experience?
Maybe I will try. I think that we need to be positive and be happy with even a small funding that we can get from the private sector. Let's be grateful and ambitious and keep in dialogue with the sector. And I think there are a lot of opportunities. And as we can see, even if it's not a mainstream, we are growing and we can share the experiences with each other. So I think we should be positive about it and just try.
Super nice positive note.
Thank you.
What about Peter or Anne-Marie? Any last words of wisdom from you?
Well, I would really like to have the Holy Grail. Oh, well, I think an important part is the value of green for us as human beings. And with the changing climate, I think this is so the urgency, the importance. I think this is important, and maybe we can organize support in the private funding sector because of this importance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's critical. Peter, any final words from you for any cities that are thinking about diversifying or making those first steps? Maybe we've lost Peter. Anna Maria, what about you? Any final words of encouragement to cities? I think it's clear that there's a whole lot of support out there. How do they take the first step?
Well, the first step is communication. Just try to reach out, and that's the first pace, first step. And I think, like Monica said, let's be positive. I've seen in the last period a lot of good practices and a lot of good experiences, and yeah, there is a lot to build, but I think if we keep networking and communicating, we can reach each other and we can share. The most important thing is to be flexible and to communicate. And I think we will find the solution, whether the projects are small or the projects are big and very attractive.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for those positive words of encouragement, and to each and every one of you for this really engaging discussion. I think my key takeaway is that, in spite of the fact that alternative financing beyond, say, public funds is not yet mainstream in cities, and while there are challenges, there are also a raft of supports available. So, and there's also many inspiring and practical examples from cities of all sizes who are capitalizing on alternative financing opportunities with real impact, as we've seen. So I think today's session has shown us, that cities can lead when the tools are available and the support is targeted and they have the partnerships in place. Financial mechanisms and actors do need to continue evolving, to match the ambition that's there and the need that's there with accessibility. We do need greater support for small cities who have a whole other level of challenges to cope with. But little by little, when we start making proactive steps, I think we can get there. So I hope this brought you some food for thought today. As Kelly said in the chat, we're going to continue exploring opportunities during the next Innovation Lab. And to hear more about that now, I'll hand over to Kelly, and I'll mute myself, Kelly, so that you can tell us more about what's coming up in the next Innovation Labs.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Eileen, and to all of our speakers, and of course, to our cities, and Anna Maria from the European Investment Bank. So we're a little bit over time, it looks like, where we had originally said it would go until 4, but then the agenda said 3:30, which we just realized. So apologies for that, and thanks for everyone sticking around. So what I wanted to do to tee up the next Innovation Lab, which is on June 12th, and I've already placed in the chat a registration link, and you're very warmly welcome to attend, is to have all of you reflect on your current insurance situation, or what you know of it, like what type of insurance is available for the risks that you are trying to address. If you're a city, are you buying insurance? Who are the insurers? Again, who is buying that insurance? It's really useful just to establish what role insurance currently plays. So if you could all think on that, that would be really great. And we will have a much deeper discussion with Invest for Nature, which is another Horizon EU project like Naturance, to additional case studies in Poznan and Aarhus. And yeah, I'm really energized by today's discussion and very grateful for your time and attention. So again, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.